Okay, so tonight's lesson is on independent and dependent variables. We want to be able to identify these in word problems and on graphs and in equations. So if we think about independent, if you think about the word itself, means it's not relying on other things. If you're an independent person, you don't wait for other people to act, you act on your own. If you think about time is independent of other things. Nothing can influence time. Seconds are going to go by no matter what happens. So time is an independent variable. When you think about dependent, one thing needs to depend on another, which is kind of like my little song in the background. So if you are at school and you want to be picked up by your parent, you are dependent on when your parent arrives. So your parent is a dependent variable. We want to look at a couple of different word situations and identify the independent and dependent variables. So if we look at the first one, the number of hours worked and the money earned. Well, of course you want to earn lots of money, but you're not going to earn it unless you put in the hours, okay? So your money that you're going to get in your paycheck is dependent on how much hours that you work. So your hours, which again is time, would be independent. The next one, the grade on your test and the number of hours you studied. Well, obviously, you would like to have a nice grade in your test, but that's dependent on how much time you studied, right? So in this case, the number of hours you study is going to be dependent on your test grade. So in this case, that's going to be our dependent, and this is going to be our independent. Okay, so that this. Or actually, I said that backwards. This is dependent. This is going to depend on the hours that you put in. So again, time independent. Sorry. The number of people working on a particular job and the time it takes to complete a job. Okay. So obviously, most people want a job done quickly. But how quickly it gets done depends on the number of people working. So the people is going to be the dependent. And again, time is independent. The number of games played and the number of points scored. Okay. Well, obviously you want a lot of points to win the game, but that is going to be dependent on the number of games played. So this is going to be your dependent, and this is going to be your independent. Okay? Hopefully it's making sense. And the last one, the speed of the car and how far the driver pushes down the gas pedal. You try that one at home. Which one's going to be independent and which one's going to be dependent? The speed of the car or the gas pedal? When we're also looking at independent and dependent properties, we can also look at equations. Hopefully this looks familiar to you. This is a linear equation. And we have x and then we have y. Okay? Y is your answer. Your answer is going to depend on what we place in for x. So x is always going to be your independent. Okay? So my x value, which is also called my input, I'm going to input a value for x. You can think of I as input or independent. Y is my answer. So that depends on what I plug in for x. If I plug in 1 for x, then my y is going to be 10. It's dependent on this number. But if I pick a different value for x, if I pick 4, 4 times 2 is 8 plus 8. Now y would be 16. So y is dependent on the x, which is the independent value. So we're also going to look at some equations and what the independent and dependent variable are. And then we're going to look at some situations. And then we're also going to think about what types of situations would independent be and dependent in class tomorrow. So I'd like for you to come in with a couple of notes. Come in with this last one finished, which one is independent, which one is dependent, and come in being able to explain what an independent and dependent variable is. And I will see you in the morning. And Creeper says, good night, you Minecrafters.